We've got William in California. How are you?
Hey there, can you guys hear me okay?
We can. Yep. Welcome to the show.
Okay, I had a question for you. I just wanted to ask, this leads to another question, but I wanted to know your opinion or what your thought is on where blacks and whites came from. Did they come from the same ape?
Sorry, well, I didn't hear you.
I wanted to know if you feel blacks and whites came from the same ape.
From the same ape? All humans share a common ancestor, so yes.
Okay, so
an
did
ape-like
black and white diverge from there, and maybe perhaps one was more advanced, they evolved faster? Because I don't see them evolving the same progression. How does that happen?
I don't. Okay, so I don't necessarily know what you mean, because evolution isn't a ladder. There's no goal. There's no more evolved or less evolved. So the concepts that you're talking about just don't make sense in the light of the science.
How did whites and blacks, how did they diverge? How do we have blacks and how do we have whites?
They're just variations among the same race. I don't think that we've evolved any differently.
Yeah, I mean, we evolve, and there are changes that take place, and one of those changes, probably due to isolation, population isolation, is skin pigmentation. Why are you just focused on black and whites? Because, first of all, there's an incredibly broad spectrum of ethnic diversity on the planet just among humans. But that doesn't say anything about who's more evolved or less evolved.
Well, what I'm trying to ask is how did white and black people come about? Because if they're from the same ape, how did we get black skin and how did we get white skin?
The same way we got people with, different shaped eyes, the same way we got people with different body types.
Right, diversity. We have to have a genetic code for diversity. But how did we get black and white skin if we're all from the same ape?
I just told you. The same way that we got all the other changes.
So you're not giving me a concrete answer. You're just saying, oh, there's just changes.
Are you looking for me to say that 650,000 years ago this one tribe split off and their skin darkened, and I can't pinpoint an actual location or time, but we know from genetics that all human beings, black, white, and otherwise, share a common ancestor.
How can we prevent, if someone wants to say, if history repeats itself, how can we prevent racism if everyone believes in evolution where it's just up in the air, you can just choose whatever you want to believe?
You don't just choose what you want to believe. Belief's not a simple choice. Evolution has nothing to do with racism. Racism is a prejudicial view of ethnicities that are based on biases that have nothing to do with...
Look. I want to give you a scenario that happened just 100 years ago. When Darwin said that the Australian Aborigines were descendants of an ape man, we had explorers go out there and they killed thousands of men. They were called skull hunters. They killed these guys and brought them back to zoos and on display for people to look. We have some of the skulls in museums. And you guys sit there and talk about the Salem witch trials, which they make recommendations for that.
William.
Yes.
Darwin was wrong, and the people who did that were wrong. There's nothing about Would you
did
shut up and let me finish?
They did act
Would you shut up and let me finish?
Go for it.
There's nothing about evolution, properly understood, that leads to that. That is people coming to the wrong conclusion. Now, you compared this to, you guys want to complain about the Salem witch trials, and that's because in the Bible it specifically says, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." There is nothing like that in evolution. There's nothing in the genetic code that says, "Thou shalt dislike the person whose color is different from yours." It doesn't work that way. You're comparing a scientific understanding of the diversity of life with a book that explicitly says to kill people. And you're saying, wow, to me?
Well, I'm yet to see where it says in the New Testament, not the Old Testament, New Testament, because we're under a new covenant, where it says to kill people that are witches. Now,
okay.
Concrete answer. So I thank you very much, and I hope you never again use mockery as far as Salem witch trials goes in your argument.
William, I'm getting ready to mock you mercilessly.
Go for it.
Why on earth do you just want to toss out the Old Testament? That's where your creation myth comes from. That's where original sin comes from. Was your God just wrong in all of the Old Testament when he sanctioned slavery and the killings? Was he a psychopath who got better in the New Testament? Why do you get to throw out the majority of your book? Because it's inconvenient for you.
No, it's not, and I can argue it too. Because first of all, in the Old Testament, not all men was under the covenant. We had atonement. God was our atonement, so everything was free. You could kill someone because there was no law. We are under law now.
Wow, that's absolutely bizarre. So if anybody who wasn't under your God's law, it wasn't wrong for them to kill. But what I'm asking is, your God specifically sanctioned slavery and murder.
No, he didn't. How?
Exodus 21. Have you not read it? It specifically tells you who you can enslave and who you can't, and how much to pay for them, and that you can beat them as long as they don't die. He specifically ordered Moses to run around slaughtering people, along with Joshua and pretty much everybody else of the barbarian Jews who ran around slaughtering anybody that got in their path. Your God, according to the Bible that you like, or not the part that you like, because you only like the New Testament, but in the Old Testament, your God specifically sanctioned those things, including slaughtering entire peoples and keeping all the virgin girls for yourselves.
You know, those arguments right there, I've argued so long. You could go for days just arguing, because it's all context. You have to take it in the right context.
Okay, so you're saying there's some context in which it's okay to own slaves, beat slaves, slaughter people, and rape virgins. There's a context for that?
Let's take one at a time. Which is your argument? Is it beat slaves, own slaves? Which one is it?
We'll start with a simple one. Owning another human being as property. What is the context in which that's okay?
Back in the Old Testament, owning slaves was not the same as beating them like that.
Wrong.
Wrong, William.
William. William, shut up. The question was owning people as property. What makes it moral?
Well, what makes it immoral if your viewpoint, if your standpoint is from no morality?
I'm sorry. You're the one who's here. You're the one who said you could defend this, that there was a context. You don't get to divert by asking broader questions about morality. I'm asking you, what is the context by which you justify the biblical authorization to own other people as property? You said there was context. I want to know what it is.
Okay, well, like I said, back then, if you did not have money to support yourself, people offered themselves as slaves for work.
This is not about indentured servitude. This is about owning people as property. Word for word, what is the context that I'm missing?
Well, first of all, okay, I want to know how you feel that is wrong.
Hey, William, goodbye. Done. I'll let you take the next one. I'm gonna have a drink. Sorry, you don't get to toss out the majority of your holy book because it's inconvenient, then claim that you can defend it, and then claim that I'm wrong because there's some context that makes it right, and then lie about what it actually says. You're either ignorant of what your book says, or you are lying to make excuses for it. And all your diversions about morality, I don't have time to give you a lecture on morality. You can go Google superiority of secular morality and hear what I actually have to say about it, and we can actually have discussions. But I think you're being incredibly dishonest, because I think we both agree, like almost everybody on the fucking planet, that owning another human being as property that you can pass down to your kids is immoral, and yet your book sanctions it. And by the way, killing witches, immoral. The same thing about if a man lies with a man as he lies with a woman, they've committed an abomination and are deserving to be put to death, also immoral. Your book is a cavalcade of immorality. It is a nightmarish parade through your God's failures and bloodlust. And the fact that you want to just chuck all of that inconvenience aside, hang on to original sin, the Ten Commandments, and Jesus, makes you an idiot on that subject. No two ways about it. This is not just an ad hominem, oh, he just called me an idiot instead of addressing my argument. No, I did both. Your argument is stupid, and you're stupid for trying to offer it. You don't know what you're talking about. Hey, it's been a while since I had a really good rant.
Yeah, that ought to get put up on YouTube as a clip.
What happens when you interrupt me from my homemade chili that I was making today to come in and do the show.
Well, and he wants to throw out the Old Testament, but isn't the Ten Commandments in the Old Testament?
Yep.
Is he throwing that out too?
Along with the other 603 that, yeah. The Protestants ignore it. Yes, according to the Bible, we're under different covenants. I can't believe that people call in and think that we don't really know this stuff. There's, the Mosaic Law, the Noahic Law, and then there's Jesus. Okay, even if that was the case, well, why would you think that you can just shuck that aside? I mean, if Jesus came and made everything better and put us under a new covenant, please explain to me how the old covenant of actually running around slaughtering people was moral. Now, William Lane Craig will, and other apologists will. They'll say, hey, God said to do it. God is moral. Therefore, this was moral.
By definition, whatever God does is moral. Yeah.
Great. So when God told Abraham to kill Isaac, that was moral. Oh, he stopped him, though. He stopped him. Yes, he did, supposedly. But why would you need to do that test in the first place? It's okay for Moses to run around killing and capturing people and keeping the virgin girls for yourselves, which they probably just did by age. I'm pretty sure they didn't do a gynecological exam on all of them to figure out who was a virgin, but it's still completely sick. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a godless heathen who spent 80 or 20 some odd years teaching and preaching this stuff. The content of this video is produced by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. If you enjoyed this content and are willing and able to provide a donation, please visit the website below.